Good afternoon, everybody. It's Craig Van Epps from Haler, Fryer & Kuhn and Allaire Company, back with Jackie Kelly Caden from RLK General Insurance. And we're back with another episode of Next and Now, our 6th episode, and our political episode, one you've been super excited for.
I have been waiting patiently. I love this time. I am a political junkie through and through, have always been. I just love it. And so I have been waiting patiently every episode for this one. And we have two great guests on, and we really talk about coming together despite our political differences and how to get things done for our constituents and our communities. And, just how in the insurance industry, from, Assemblywoman Pam Hunter's perspective, how we can get involved, and then from Mayor Walsh's perspective, how we can also get involved in our local community and come together through calling, emailing, setting up an appointment with the legislators, going to City Hall, going to Assemblywoman Hunter's office, and not just going to Albany and DC a couple times a year, or spending just every 4 years you're paying attention, but really engaging in your community. And then if it's hard for you to do any of those things, you can always donate to your favorite, local political organization or nonprofit organization that focuses on the things that you care about. And so we talk about that in the insurance industry. The IAPAC, our two PACs, which are really important. IAPAC and then InsurePAC, which is our federal PAC, and they really help those small dollar donations. And the more of us agents who volunteer and who can donate, it really makes a difference for bills like the photo inspection bill, which was huge for our clients, for our agencies, and other legislation like that makes our work easier and then helps us serve our clients better. And so again, it's so huge. If you cannot get out and volunteer, if you cannot, set up a meeting with your legislator, you can donate to the PAC funds for for our industry.
And it doesn't have to be $100, right?
No.
$100 is nice, but 1, 5, 10, 20, every little bit helps. And it's a numbers game. So law of large numbers, right?
Yes.
So more people, even if it's a small amount, it's going to make a large impact.
Yeah, and you know what she did say your point is reminding me that the more they see those numbers of people who donate, and the more they hear those personal stories, the bigger the impact is. They can then confidently vote for legislation that they know are going to not just benefit us, but our clients and our members of our community. It's going to make a huge difference. So,
as Pamela Hunter said, it's the stories from the clients that really ring in the ears and make the impact. So give that feedback, not only from the agency side, but garner that feedback from your clients as well and share that, because that's how we make differences like the photo inspection.
Exactly. And then you talk about and remind us, this is, voting. Then all of that aside, vote. So if you don't do anything else, it's the most important thing you do.
Exactly. It's our right. We should be grateful. We should exercise it. And I always tell my friends and family, did you vote? If the answer is no, then I don't want to hear you complain either, because really that's your opportunity. That's your opportunity to have a voice.
Yeah, that is. And I told my students when I was a teacher, I have my tattoo, it's the most patriotic thing you can do as a citizen.
And before you complain, ask yourself, what did I do? What can I do to serve? What have I done to help?
Yes.
Instead of pointing the finger, right? What have I done as a citizen?
Yep.
So we have Mayor Ben Walsh with us today. We have Assemblywoman Pamela Hunter with us. We're super excited about the episode. Hope you enjoy it. Hi everybody, Craig Van Epps here from Haler, Fryer & Kuhn and Allaire Company, alongside Jackie Kelly Caden from RLK General Insurance. And we're back with another episode of Next and Now, and we're honored and privileged to have Mayor Ben Walsh with us today.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for
and welcome to City Hall.
Yes,
So
this is such a beautiful place. It is so exciting, and we all know I'm a political junkie, so I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so you're an independent.
Right.
The first independent mayor of the city of Syracuse in its history.
Yeah.
And so how did you develop your political identity?
Right.
And how did you find your call to serve? And then what is something that the people of Syracuse don't know about you?
There's a lot there. I'll try to be brief, but in order for me to answer the first part of the question, how I became an independent, how I identified my political identity, it really does. I have to go back to my childhood, my upbringing, which was in a household, in a family full of public servants. So my father, I spent early years coming to City Hall here to this building, visiting my dad when he was on the common council. He was a district councilor, council president, and then of course served in Congress. My grandfather served in this building as well as mayor, and aunts and uncles that have served in every type of way, from social service to healthcare to education. And so I was just surrounded by people that serve the community, which inspired me. As it related to politics, so that was the positive side of growing up in that family. The negative side was anytime someone would find out what my last name was or what my dad did, the first question they would want to know is, well, is he a Republican or a Democrat? And as soon as I gave that answer, they not only had him all figured out, they had me all figured out. And that drove me crazy. So if I'm being honest, when I registered to vote, when I chose to check that box that said I do not wish to enroll in a political party, that was my little act of youthful defiance, saying, you don't know me, I'm not my father, I'm going to be my own person.
Sure.
And so that was the thought process at that point. But as I grew up and as I followed my path in public service, I kind of felt like I was in the right place, and by not allowing people to kind of put me in that box, it allowed me to look at issues more openly, and ultimately when I decided to go into politics, I felt like it was a big part of who I was and what I was about, and ultimately, despite the fact that people told me that I couldn't do it, I did it, and I did it my way, in a way that I was staying true to myself, which was really important to me.
Yeah, I do love that you, first of all, that it was that's your teenage rebellion.
Exactly. That's what I was.
You're gonna be an independent,
right?
But then the idea that you can stay authentic
right.
in that space where people think you just have to pick a side and stay in that,
right.
And you really found a way through that felt good. Like, it was a youthful, defiant start, but then it's like, actually, this is you as a person.
Who I am.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah. And I don't think I'm unique in that regard, by the way. I think most people don't fit neatly into the boxes that our system tries to place people in. And without getting too philosophical on that whole two-party system, the reality is, I think when you set the parties aside, I think most people would agree with that. And if you look at enrollment, what you're actually seeing is more people are enrolling as unaffiliated with parties. So I think there's something there.
Yeah. Okay. What is one thing?
Yeah,
I know.
That's one thing that people don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things that people don't know. I'm a fairly private person. I'm a homebody these days. Some things that people are usually surprised. Again, talking about stereotyping people. People are surprised to find out that I worked construction early on in my career. I think people have a hard time imagining me in a hard hat and a jackhammer. The hard hat part, politicians do, but the rest of it, not so much. So I work construction, and there's a lot more, but
there's so much there.
That one people have a hard time believing.
Fun fact, yeah. And so Craig and I, we joke all the time about this. We're on opposite sides of the political aisle, yet managed to do a podcast together. Right. Our colleagues on the same board, our friends. And so what advice would you give to people? We know how we navigate that. Right. We stay light. We talk about policies, but yes, we know we're coming at it from a different perspective, but we don't let that kind of define the rest of the conversation or the day or whatever. But what's advice you give to people as they're navigating this crazy season, which I love, but it's not for everybody. Yeah. With their colleagues, their family, their friends.
Yeah. Well, I think you two are good examples of you know what your boundaries are, and try, even if it's tempting at times, try to resist the temptation to go where I know. It's not going to end well. But I think that, getting back to the earlier conversation, I don't think any of us fit neatly in the boxes that the the system wants us to fit into. I think that it's really important, and this is something that I try to do in leadership, is be empathetic, try to look at the world through other people's lenses, even if it's not your own lens, and understand that while they may disagree with you, it may come from a real legitimate place based on their own lived experience that you're not familiar with. And so I have family and friends of different political persuasions, but if you focus, and what I really try to do is focus inherently on the good in people, and know that most people are just trying to do the right thing, and again, just have different perspectives. But when you push most of it aside and you just focus on on what makes us all human beings, and I know that sounds cliche, but it's a great place to start, and just try to give people grace, give them the benefit of the doubt that they're not that they're not inherently bad or evil. They're just they're being themselves, and if you want that person to be in your life and have a relationship with them, then accept them for who they are. And if you don't, then stop talking to them about politics.
Thank you. That's the other thing is we don't have to engage people,
That's
right?
right.
You don't have to do it. And so my thing is yes, we have, when you kind of strip us down to the things we care about, they're very similar
Sure.
things. We just have maybe different ways of approaching it or thinking about it.
Right.
And then I love that you said that, like, really assume good intentions.
Yeah.
Because when you do that, this is a gift that I know someone who's a friend who is, and my own father, my family, that I have to help me challenge me in my own assumptions.
Right.
I think it's a gift.
Yeah.
If you only have monoculture around you, that is
Right.
so unhelpful, I feel like.
Well, and I think your point about challenging your own assumptions, be self-reflective, look in the mirror.
Yes.
And one of the things that I check myself all the time in this job is mayor, as an executive, as a boss, you're expected to have all the answers and to know what the right decision is. And if you're being honest with yourself, you don't always. And that goes for politics too. So again, look in the mirror. And as my dad likes to say, don't take yourself too seriously.
Yes. Have some fun.
I like that. I like what you said there, because I always say, you've heard me say this a million times, you can take something positive from every person, right?
Amen.
In every interaction.
Right.
Sometimes you may have to look for it a little deeper than other times,
Right.
but
Yeah.
there's definitely something there. every
Agreed.
time.
You are so good at that, and he will say hi to every single person. You are, so either you're trying to brighten someone's day or find the joy or goodness in
nice.
someone else. It's a really nice, it's a nice thing to
Try to leave
mindful.
everybody a little better than when you met them.
That's right.
When you encounter them.
That's another thing you always say. Yeah.
So Jackie and I are in the insurance business.
Right.
She owns an agency over on Washington Street, RLK General Insurance, and I work across the way in the Haler, Fryer and Coon building at
Yeah.
Haler, Fryer and Coon, and with a focus in small business. And we often talk about the symbiotic relationship between business and insurance, and how we need thriving business in our
Right.
community because we insure those businesses.
Yeah.
And in turn, entrepreneurs can't start, develop, and grow business
Right.
without proper insurance coverage. How does city help support the growth of small business in our city of
Yeah.
Syracuse?
Well, we start by thanking you for doing business in the city of Syracuse, and really appreciate that you both are in the city and specifically downtown. But I try my role. I worked in the previous administration, and my role was Deputy Commissioner of Neighborhood and Business Development. So really, I focused on supporting businesses, and I would always try to start with understanding that businesses need to do what's in the best interest of the business and of the bottom line, and that isn't always aligned with what's in the best interest of the city, but often it is. And so what I always say when I'm talking to businesses, first and foremost, I expect and understand that you're going to make a decision based on what's in the best interest of the business. I hope to give you information and give you reasons to see that doing business here in the city will support your business. But again, it's kind of understanding the decision-making criteria. It's also understanding what role government can play in impacting people's businesses. So at a very basic core function in city government, we have certain permitting responsibilities when you open your businesses. I remember when Haler, Fryer and Coon came downtown, and we had to assist them with getting the sign up on the building and all these things that for using a negative term, the red tape, right? The bureaucratic
Yes.
red tape. One of the things I try to hammer home to our team and to embed in our culture is understanding that the actions that we take in city government, what as bureaucratic as they may be, have a direct impact on the livelihoods of the people that we serve. And so, as that relates to business, that might be an example where you're waiting on a permit to start construction, or maybe you're waiting on a certificate of occupancy, and it might be easy as a city employee to say, well, I'm going to wait. I'm going to push that to the side of the desk, and I'll get back to it sometime next week. Having an understanding that time that you push it aside has a direct impact on people's livelihoods, and it may seem like not a big deal for you, but it could literally be a matter of a business being successful or unsuccessful. And so having an understanding of how our actions and inactions impact business. Beyond that, but related, understanding the financial considerations. And so when we often get questions about, well, why do you give businesses grants, or and we have a low interest loan program through the Syracuse Economic Development Corporation. Why do you give these dreaded pilot agreements or payment in lieu of tax agreements where people seemingly aren't paying taxes, although they always are, even in a pilot agreement? But the reason is because there's a cost of doing business, and a business is going to determine whether or not it makes financial sense to do business in the city. And when we can offer a subsidy that assists with making the numbers work in a way that also ensures that as a result of that public investment, we're getting something back, whether it's in the form of jobs, whether it's in the form of putting a property back on the tax rolls or increasing the value. It's a cost benefit analysis. You're doing it on your end, we're doing it on our end. But I think having an understanding of what's important to you as a business owner and what you need from us is a big part of what we try to consider when we're offering those services.
Yeah, that's great, because it's important to remind. Yeah, I think of that even from my perspective, like, oh, why are they getting a tax break?
Right.
But yes, you think of all of the pieces, and you're seeing it from that space. Is that the business is doing can provide multiple benefits.
Right.
It's not just that one thing to think about. So.
Right.
And we've really enjoyed being down in the city of Syracuse. We enjoyed our old building in Salina Meadows, just outside the city, and some of the employees were a little concerned, moving downtown. But now it's so lively. There's so many nice places to go to lunch, and after work, there's places to go, and it's been really great.
Great to hear.
Yeah, and when you go to the America's downtown committee lunches or breakfast, you really then see the work of city and why it's so important to have a vibrant, thriving city and downtown space.
Yes, we've come a long way over the past decade or so. A lot of investment and more to come.
Yeah,
absolutely. And kind of down that same path, we all have heard about Micron and the impact that will have in the community. And what do you think the biggest opportunities are for the community to help support Micron as it comes? And have you heard concerns from the community? And how do you think city and the community can support those constructively?
Yeah, great question. So I just want to share an anecdote from yesterday that will, I think, help inform this response. So yesterday morning, I dropped my daughter off at school. The first meeting I went to was with top officials from the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, to meet to kick off our grant process for the $50 million grant they awarded us for the project that we're doing with the Syracuse Housing Authority and redeveloping their public housing down on the just south of downtown. I had to leave that meeting early to get to CNS High School, where U.S. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo was in town with Governor Hochul, talking about Micron and the opportunity in ensuring that we're training our young people for the jobs, the 9,000 direct jobs and 50,000 indirect jobs that are coming. I then left that meeting and sat down with a meeting with New York State DOT to talk about the $2.25 billion infrastructure project that we have underway right now with 81. That literally all happened before noon. I would note that all three of those are very direct, tangible examples of the federal government investing in Syracuse. And those projects are reflections of the fact that Syracuse and Central New York is on the forefront of a lot of different areas, from housing to economic development to infrastructure. So it's a pretty exciting time to be in this line of work. Micron, is the biggest example. I joke that 81 sounded like a big project until Micron came along, and you're talking about $100 billion. The reality is, though, that when you look, as exciting as all that is, and as much is going on, if you look backwards at the history of this community, up until recently, we did not see that type of investment, we did, both from the public sector or private sector. We've lost a lot of industry. This community has suffered a lot of economic trauma, job loss, people moving away. And so, and then following that, a lot of false promises, a lot of projects that were proposed that never happened. And so we all are guarded. I find myself that way. I'm a very optimistic person, but Micron, I think to many still feels a little too good to be true. And I understand that. I understand why people feel that way. But when you kind of get yourself out of your feelings a little bit and you look at what's happening and the fact that the president has been here twice to talk about the Micron project, the Secretary of Commerce was here yesterday. But more importantly, when you look at the actions and investments of Micron, they're investing real money. They have hired people. They have invested hundreds of millions of dollars into their community impact fund, and the federal government has made very firm financial commitments to support this work through the CHIPS and Science Act. So I understand until not even the shovels hit the ground, but till the ribbon's being cut, some people are going to be skeptical. But my feeling, I believe firmly that it's going to happen. There are many signals of how it's happening, but ultimately the best way to show the doubters is just to get it done. And so that's what I know Micron is focused on. That's what we're focused on, and it's going to be a game changer.
It's exciting. And I went to several of the community impact talks and have posted it on my LinkedIn, and have like the list 1, 2, 3, 4 as I was typing in as they were speaking the promises that they made. Yeah. So there's an accountability too. We're all, everyone's watching. So that's right. Everybody's watching. So show us, don't tell us.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's the plan.
Yeah.
Well, it's exciting times out here in Syracuse, and we really appreciate the time sitting down with us and talking with us today.
Yeah, anytime. Again, appreciate what you all are doing, and I look forward to seeing what's to come, and happy to report back anytime.
Thank you so much, Mayor Walsh. Really, thank you.
My pleasure.
Good afternoon, everybody. Craig Van Epps here from Haler, Fryer & Coon and Allaire Company, alongside Jackie Kelly Caden from RLK General Insurance, and we're back with another episode of Next and Now, our political episode, and we're very honored to have Assemblywoman Pamela Hunter with us today. Thank you for taking time to sit down with us today.
Happy to be here. Thank you so much, Pam, for being here. We are so honored. This season is my favorite season. I'm a political junkie, and so how did you get into politics? What inspired you to get into public service? And then in particular, insurance. We're obviously insurance agents. And so why insurance and public service?
Well, I will try to make this a very long story short. So service has always been in my family. My father actually and parents marched for civil rights, with Reverend Abernathy, Tent City, the Poor People's Campaign, the original Poor People's Campaign. So this is how I grew up with service. This is how I just knew that you were always supposed to be able to give back. That looks different in different ways. I worked for various not-for-profits and for-profit entities. And when I moved to Syracuse, was looking for something to just kind of broaden. And I went to a couple of different action agencies and said, I want to volunteer with all of the little letters of the names of entities that we know. And, they weren't active as I thought that they could or needed to be in this space. And so then Council President Van Robinson, who I had met, said, why don't I take you to one of these Democratic committee meetings? And I went to a committee meeting, and it was during election time. And it was interesting because you saw all these people in the room, and, they were stuffing envelopes, and it just seemed like a bunch of people and busy. Interestingly enough, that campaign office that I had went to, and it never occurred to me till many years later, was actually Joan Christensen, whose assembly seat I sit in right now.
Oh, no
Wow.
kidding.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah, and so that was never the plan. It just kind of happened that way. But I was on the city council in the city of Syracuse, and I wanted to be able to participate in something that I knew could be life changing. And this really had to do with my son. Really, it was not for affecting change for myself and, just broadly for others. But I wanted to make sure that his cohort, had a better chance at whatever it was. And so that has always been my driver for young people. So I was on the city council, for 3 years, and have been in the state assembly, a special election in 2015, and I've been there ever since. And when you first get elected, the speaker sends you this list, and it's like of 25 committees. Pick your top 10 of the committees you want to be in. I picked 5 because I didn't want to get jammed into something that I wasn't interested in. And so the 5 that I chose, insurance was the number 1 committee that I asked to be on. And I felt, even though I didn't have an insurance background at all, I felt very compelled that insurance touches every single part of our lives.
Yes.
And because it does, I felt it impacts every single part of my constituents' life. And so I should be educated on insurance and what is costing and, affects their lives in a way to be able to, positively affect change. I've had lots of different insurance bills that have gotten across the finish line, big bills, that impact people's lives. And so for me, that was kind of my segue into it, but always wanting to make sure to take care of the people, the constituents, but honing in on their needs specifically.
That was so prescient of you because coming into insurance, coming as a teacher, and my dad he owns his own business. So insurance has been in our family for forever. And I can't tell you the ignorance, if you're not doing it every day or thinking through it, you don't think about it. You pay your premium once a year and you know that you need it when you get into an accident or if you have a claim on your house, but it's for you to say that. Now I know, when I came into my family business and started taking claims calls and working through insurance that way. Now I see how it touches literally every. And if you don't have it, for the single moms on in my client base, it becomes almost impossible to do your daily life if you don't have insurance. So now I know. But for you to have gone in and said, "Oh, insurance is going to be the place that I can affect change and to make a difference for people," that's incredible. And now you're on NCOIL, so the National Conference of Insurance Legislators. You're at the State Assembly Insurance Committee. So you have made a huge impact in that space. So we really appreciate it. You come to our legislative breakfast.
Yes.
And
insurance I am.
you are so, it's like, to talk about an insurance nerd, we talk about being insurance nerds. And when I was sitting next to you at the first ledge breakfast, and I'm like, your compelling way of explaining your story with your husband's experience with insurance, and then touching on all of the detailed legislation that insurance, how it affects our clients and us. So anyway, thank you for sharing that story.
Welcome. Another thing that I thought is really important is I now chair the Standing Committee on Banks, and so I'm all things financial services in the Assembly. So not only have I been on the Insurance Committee for the past 9 years, I've also chaired the Banking Committee for this last 2. And really, to me, it just kind of rounds out my financial services in New York State. But what to me is really compelling about insurance, and just especially in this banking space, is you need to have financial literacy, and insurance is just like another tool in your toolkit for financial literacy, whether it's talking about tenant insurance, homeowners insurance, and you get jammed up if you don't have it when you need it. And now we're in a situation where you desperately need it for many different things, and affordability is a huge issue. So it's always evolving conversation about financial services, and insurance is a part of that.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as Jackie mentioned, obviously we're both in the insurance industry, and how important that is for everybody's personal lives with your home and your assets, and businesses, keeping them running and protecting them. But what are some of the key insurance points that you hear most from your constituents and agents?
Yeah. I would say it's a little bit different on both sides. So for constituents, availability of being able to get insurance, whether it's reliable car insurance, being able to, and now everything is app based. So you don't necessarily need to actually even see a person to get a policy written. And sometimes that's a little scary because you don't really know what you're going to get. And I think that preys a lot on people who are maybe undereducated on insurance and what you really need compared to what you can afford. And that is always the difference. So availability, affordability is definitely very key because you want to make sure folks are protected. But if you're trying to figure out how you're going to pay your rent, how you're going to pay your mortgage, how am I going to pay my insurance premium, something is going to lag, then you get yourself in this circle where if you don't pay your insurance, then your car, registration is suspended. It's like this whole cycle. And so that's where I talked about the financial literacy. But on the carrier side, it's interesting because many of the carriers talk about not having available resources, meaning manpower. People, they're not getting new people to come in to work. And so you need agents, you need, people to process claims and write new policies, and being able to identify like new hires in the industry has been difficult for brokers. I hear about that a lot. And the rate increases, obviously the superintendent and the Department of Financial Services in New York has been hesitant to give rate increases. And I know some of them did get a rate increase. That's good for business. Obviously they need to be able to make the math work. Rate increases equal rate increases for ratepayers too, right? And so that makes it very difficult when, a carrier needs this rate increase, hasn't had it. We've had climate change. We have deer crashes so much. We've had a lot of break-ins in cars, and all of that costs all of us money. It's just trying to be able to weigh a rate increase from the department compared to how much can people pay. And we're getting into a situation where they can't. It's not affordable. And obviously carriers leaving different states, and we don't want that in New York. People need to be covered, but we're covering in things that we wouldn't be even having a conversation about coastal flooding 20 years ago.
Right.
And that's something we're having conversations about now.
Yeah, up here.
And you mentioned the technology side of it, and there's so many different apps out there and ways for people to have those resources and educate themselves. But I think what studies have shown is that's the beauty of the independent agent is after you've gathered some of that information, it's important to sit down and have a conversation with an actual human being who can talk to you about some of those challenges and maybe raise your deductible, take a defensive driving class, whatever it is, to offset some of those costs as they go up instead of just saying, okay, I'm just going to click here and roll the dice.
Or I can't afford it because you're not, because we can tell. I love that you're saying about the deductibles, because that can mitigate. If we don't have, if businesses, insurance companies can't keep up with their own insurance premiums and their own and reinsurance, they're going to exit the market, and then we're having a situation where the rates go up because there's just not enough of a market for it. And so if you're talking to Craig or me and we're saying, that's high, let's look at $1,000 deductibles, even $2,500 deductibles on your car. Some of our clients are doing just to keep the cost down while it's such a hard market. And then we can kind of look at it again in a year at your policy review. And you're not going to get a policy review with an app, with a human.
Right.
So,
I think what's important about what you just said to add on to is the new inclusion of AI in this space. And we want to make sure that that human element is not taken away because an algorithm doesn't know that relationship, that we have. But we also want to make sure that there isn't bias and discrimination either. And so those things, why AI seems great and it helps me, write a paper and do all of these other, research type things. I was a computer science major when I was first in college, and it's garbage in, garbage out. All these algorithms start by coding, somebody actually typing something to create something. And you can't possibly know, just like with health insurance in a bill that I have, relative to there has to be a final eyeball decision from a person, is that even if an algorithm could read your whole medical record, they don't know the relationship that you and I have. You don't know that the algorithm doesn't know. Pam's not really compliant. She doesn't really take her medication like she's supposed to. Maybe that's not recorded in your medical file like it should be. So it's only spitting out data based on what's inside the computer, not what's human interaction. And I think that's where we need to be careful with AI and a lot of the app-based. It's all garbage in, garbage out. If you're not giving factual information, but maybe it's factual because I feel great today, but not tomorrow, that means something different in an app-based world.
Yeah, and I was talking to an underwriter. It's so funny you saying that because we were having a conversation on a client, and it was a borderline situation. It was a new piece of business, so it was a prospective client, and she said the words, my gut's telling me something about this risk, and so that you can't. There's no gut, obviously, in AI. So I even at the underwriter level, where you picture them, they're just like no, 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 yes, yes. They look at these risks and really make a decision on what they have seen before on a risk like this or on a client like this or these kind of losses, and then make a decision. And so I love that we don't ever want to take the human element out of, even though it makes our lives easier. AI, obviously, I think we never want to go away from the human element. How can agents, so along these lines, we're talking about rates, we're talking about the carriers, how can agents and then our clients also effectively communicate to you and to the legislation, and even at the local level, the state level, but even at the federal level, what are good ways that we can all get involved and make our voices known?
And usually when someone calls my office, it's not because they're having a good day. It usually is, sometimes not their highest, best shining moment, and that's okay. Those are the calls that we get, and that's what we're, here for. But personal advocacy important, because that's a lot of legislation that I carry is based on conversations I have with you all, conversations I have with constituents in the district. So, trying to identify where there are gaps, problems, in order to maybe put together legislation that'll be positive and positively impact, folks. So I think those personal stories are the most compelling, but I think it really is about relationship building as well. We're in quiet time now because we're sitting in October, it's not session time, but from January to June, when we are actively in session in Albany, it's chaotic. You come to Albany, you see, and, you want to have a meeting and you might get 10 minutes or, it just seems like everything's very rushed. And so you've got to be right on point, get the information, but there is value in having meetings outside of Albany. I think, many times people think you got to go to the belly of the beast, you got to get to Albany, and it feels like you're advocating, more, better, louder, whatnot. And all that's great. But really being able to have a quiet, calm, non-rush meeting in the district is far more valuable, than getting maybe 20 minutes or 10 minutes in Albany, because you're really not able to, really broadly convey your points. And that's why relationships ongoing, not just, one time per year, and bringing people who have those compelling stories, because, hearing from someone who has been personally affected from not having the right amount of insurance, not being able to get the credit that they need, having it come from their mouths seems a little bit different than hearing from maybe a paid lobbyist who, is advocating on behalf of a certain bill. And I meet with everyone, the people, with the bills I support, the bills that I don't support. I think that's important to listen to all sides of everything before you make a determination. But those things, I think, for me, are the most effective, is to be able to, have local relationships, constituents who are coming to speak about issues that personally affect them, and having them on an ongoing basis, not just kind of like one time per year, let's get on the bus, let's go. That's fun. That's great. We love those. We take the pictures, we have the conversations, but usually issues aren't just a one-time visit. It's an ongoing conversation that needs to happen, on a frequent basis.
Yeah.
And I happen to live in District 128, so I was the recipient of one of your flyers recently, which, well done, by the way.
Thank you
very,
very much.
very well done. And you talk about the work you've done with affordable housing and the cost of living and keeping our streets safe, and obviously those are extremely important. But what other topics do you think should be on the minds of voters as they head into the booths?
I think as we take you breathe in, you breathe out, I think, because there's just so much, whether it's political rhetoric, whether it's partisanship, where it's like you're either on the red side or the blue side, or you're on a side, and I get it, and we're right now in the middle of potentially a Subway series coming in baseball, so people are picking teams and they're picking sides or whatnot. And I would say, if people could just take a breath in space and say, all right, what is most important to me and my family, and get away from the generic terms of, hate or fear mongering or blatant kind of broad brushings, of issues, and get down to specifics. I think that's what's very key. And for me, it always has been and will always continue to be, how can I help the people who are here right now today? And, we have conversations about Micron coming. We have conversations about, the big boom, that's happening. Everybody's not going to be, an engineer at Micron if they're not able to read, and we have low literacy rates in our school, especially in the city school district, low math rates, high absenteeism rates. We have high poverty rates. We have high lead level rates. And that to me is not going to be the driver for a successful person working at Micron if they're living in these high socioeconomic issues. And so for me, it's always taking care of the people who live here right now today. If we're uplifting them, all the rest of the things will fall into place. Yeah. And I know a lot of the conversation especially has been about jail and bail and lock them up, and these kids, are causing havoc, and we should be, throwing the book at them. I live in a different space because I have one of those young people where this is our future. Young people are our future. To just think that the end result is put them away and put them in jail or lock them up or send them to a home. No, they shouldn't be committing these crimes. No, they should not be. But jail is at the end. Criminal justice system is at the end. What about, how come they're not in school? Why are we not combating that? We're not combating a lot of the social service. We give millions and millions of dollars for social services, for prevention, to intervention, even for probation in some of those cases. But we're always talking about the end. We should be talking about, how do we save and help these young people from even getting to the end? Yeah. And that's where my focus will continue to be. And, it has to be with uplifting young people out of poverty, making sure they have, a living wage, working in, positions like yours where you can have a living wage and you can get your families up out of poverty, housing stability. We should all be embarrassed at some of the way that people live in our community. It's disgraceful. And they continue to live in those situations because that's what they can afford. And we as a society have to be able to do better. And so those are the issues that kind of keep me up at night, and the ones that will continue tackling and focusing on. And, there's going to always be disparity, probably be some discrimination. All of my district does not look the same. I have very, very, very poor areas of poverty and census tracts that I represent in the highest concentration in the entire country, in the census tracts that I represent. And then I have, locations that have a lot of wealth. And so you're trying to figure, you're not having one set of policy for one side of the bridge and the other side of the bridge. It is broad policy. How can you lift up everyone? And those are the types of things that I'm, trying to work on. Affordable housing is important, but can't be affordable if there's not enough of it for people to live in.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think we're talking about the insurance, just bringing up insurance. There are jobs that, this is what I've learned also being a part of this. I was a teacher for 10 years, but you have to go to teacher's college, right? And you have to go do your teacher's work and do your student teaching. It's a process, and not all kids, they come out of high school and they're like, no, I'm definitely not going to be a teacher. First of all, they don't make any money. But insurance, for kids who are not going to go on those specific paths, there's something for everyone. And so then we talk about how do we get into more diverse spaces than to bring young people. You said this earlier in this conversation, there's not enough agents. So especially as the baby boomers are starting to retire, how are we making this attractive for kids coming right out of high school? You don't need to have a college degree to get a great job and have a living wage in insurance. You absolutely do not. So there is something, I think, for everyone, just, speaking to that. So,
and I think part of it's awareness, right? You mentioned it earlier. How do we get into some of those schools as insurance professionals and have conversations with students that may not be they don't know what insurance is. They've never thought about it. I mean, I wasn't thinking, you weren't thinking about it, right?
100%
and so
now.
they're not obviously either. So bringing that education, that awareness, I mean, what have we seen just over the last handful of years at Lemoyne, and how that program has grown and how excited those kids are, those young students, to come to our events. We have 10 at our event last week. and they're just passionate about the business. So I think it's education, it's awareness.
Yeah, and look at and like think about that. That's at the college level. Imagine at the high school level, we could have some high school kids come,
Right.
really into
Yeah.
it, and the different schools and what we've traditionally always gone to for recruiting out of high school. So just
I think it always has been, even where I sit, it's meeting people where they are. You can't expect someone to come up to you. You don't know what their background is. You don't know what their experience is. You don't know, really their whole life history, but meeting people where they are, speaking with people at their level. And insurance ease is not easy, if you're talking about reg something or, this kind of policy, and then already you've lost someone, that doesn't make it attractive for anyone to, want to be a part of something. But, it's having the conversation, even if it is, you're talking to a high school student, it's like, so what happens if your house burns down? Well, the landlord will take care of it. No, the landlord won't. And these are the conversations I think that we're not having. It just seems so high in the sky and more than what young people are thinking about. It's like having the conversation at their level. I remember a conversation I had with my son. He's 24, had a conversation with him. He said, if you weren't around to help me work through FAFSA, I would never even know what that is. He said, if you didn't talk to me about credit scores and interest and things like that, I wouldn't know what it is. They don't talk to you about that in school. And so you're getting to a point where you're not learning basic life skills. This is more than just having home ec and learning how to make, eggs and bacon, for breakfast. We're talking about life skills. And I don't know, in some ways I think, the educational system was kind of intended to make us kind of dumb people and just workers and not necessarily broad thinkers. But young people aren't in that space anymore. They're getting information all around the world. It wasn't like when we were growing up where it's like, here's 3 channels and go get your wall full of encyclopedias to go figure something out. I mean, they literally have
oh my
the
God.
whole globe at their fingertips.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you relate and what's real and what's not? Because we're in a situation now where a lot of young people are feeling left behind because they see everyone's an influencer and they look fabulous and everything looks so lavish. And that's not really real either. And so it's being able to, give positive, accurate information, to young people in a way that they can receive it. Because that kind of tired old way we would deliver information and just like you will memorize it, you will understand it. How can we make it more interesting for people to be in a profession that will take care of your family, that will pay for their college, that will give you a great living wage, but make it interesting so that young people will want to be involved. And I leave that up to you to figure that out. But there's a whole bunch of people who are going to be graduating soon, and college may not be for them. Maybe the military may not be for them because military is different now than it used to be before. But I think that we can do better probably relating to younger people and not expecting them to come up to us more so than us to figure out how do we relate to
How do we reach them?
Yeah.
Well said. I like that.
Yeah, that is great. Thank you so much
You're welcome.
for, oh my goodness.
Anytime.
Yes.
Anytime.
This is amazing. So we really appreciate you coming on our podcast.
Thank you. Anytime. Always happy to talk about insurance, talk about my district, talk about the Army.
Yeah.
I'm very happy to do it.
Yes, I love
For
that that's your origin story in the Army. That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next to Now is hosted by Jackie Kelly Caden and Craig Van Epps and produced by Michael Abbott.
Music by Michael Bullock.
Logo designed by Craig Van Epps and Maddie Tomkos.
And a special thank you to the whole Big I team for all of your support. Thank you so much.
Thank you.